So this video is in my head because I haven't done much for it. I talked to like a group of friends earlier this week that have known me for most of my life. And I'm talking to you, then I'm talking to a friend that's a historian. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like the millennials are getting ready to enter middle age. The youngest,
right, we're getting old.
Yeah. The youngest of us are in their early 30s. And then, you know, I will be 40 next week. And then like I don't know if it gets too much older than me. I imagine being the oldest millennial, that my like cohort. And so it's like that. It's like, okay, so what does that mean? Because I feel like we were the first social media generation. Like the concepts of social media were built on our whims and, you know, our things that built algorithms, et cetera. And these are the culture that we produced. And so like now we're old enough that we now have, I don't know if it was a video you made or somebody else talked about the Super Bowl halftime show this year being the first time where we really centered demographic because now we represent like the largest adult.
Yeah, I don't, there's probably a lot of other people that said that, but I pointed that out in my video about it.
Yeah,
you know, especially just specifically in regards to hip hop, just because like, you know, it's become like, you know, it's at the point where it's like, you know, Britney Spears doing the Pepsi commercial, you know, for the halftime show, essentially, you know what I mean? Like it's become that culturally relevant.
Yeah, and permeates through it as much. And like I turn on the radio now to the oldie station, and they're playing music that I listened to as kids. It's like we're going to be the first group to age on social media,
right?
Know? And so like, what is that going to look like and mean for us? What do we have left to say that is relevant to like growing culture versus like reflecting on it? You know, different things like that.
You know, me and people who are around my age have sort of felt old enough to the point where, at least in terms of like philosophy and ethos and the culture we consumed, like we got at least a bite of the tail end of that Gen X experience, you know? So it's like, I feel like, you know, it was almost kind of like easy to kind of feed into some of those kind of attitudes that they would express when, you know, they would sort of like look down on other millennials, or you would see like hit pieces or think pieces about like millennials are this and millennials are that and millennials can't do this other thing, you know, and I sort of saw it because, you know, I did grow up, I did have enough years underneath that kind of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps sort of mentality, you know what I mean? Yeah. But then by that same token, I had enough years out of it to be able to, when I had heard it enough times and sort of actually seen the numbers of what's like preventing millennials from being as successful economically and socially as previous generations, to be able to sort of like see that as bunk, you know, like pretty immediately.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to get into. Was we were the first, like, so every generation seems to forget that they were shitty to the generation before them.
Right, exactly.
And it's like so frustrating to me because I just knew that we weren't going to do this to the Z's and the Alphas. Right. Like in my head, I'm like, there's no way we're going to repeat this same bullshit that the Xers and the Boomers did to us.
I was hoping not to, and it sort of seemed like maybe for a second there would be, and I suppose like the clock is still ticking. It could happen, but I got a little worried for a second there when I was seeing like those videos going viral on TikTok of like you probably saw that one of that white girl who's like, Zoomers are canceling Eminem. Like, no way. And then she like started like, did you see it where she started?
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen a couple of stuff like that where it's like,
that's cute. Listen, little kitties, let me make this quite clear. This man was around even before you were here. So what, you're all mad because the man was a lyricist while all your rappers are mumbling gibberish? No, go ahead and shut your mouth. Better yet, go and sit your ass in time out because boy was running laps even before you could walk. Hell, boy was spitting bars even before you could talk. So no, afraid you're null and void, dear. I'm afraid your opinion don't matter here because one day you'll grow up and see how everyone went and forgot about Z.
And it's just why don't we just let them do their thing? I think it's really bad among, like, that's something I've talked about a lot, and that was a big part of the Drake video. It's like, stop shitting on modern hip hop it's over. We had a good run. I'm gonna get to it later. I think the 90s is the best era of hip hop. And I was there. And I think most, hip hop aficionados will agree that at least the culture of the 90s for hip hop is a great era to have had. So it's okay to me that I don't know who did Gucci Gang
or Lil Pump.
If Lil Pump gets a 6-month Gucci Gang run, we had that. We had plenty of those in the 90s, but we forget because we only remember the good stuff. And so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of that. And I was just like, man, I swore we weren't going to do this to the kids, but
right.
It is what it is. Well, we're getting
even like an extension of that elitism that I do not get at all. That even goes into the 2000s when, the fact of the matter is like, when you go back, like it was the Soulja Boys of that era that were laying the groundwork for the Gucci gangs. And it's like, I know people who I grew up with in college or, were huge hip hop fans or just general music consumers in college who were just like, I don't get any of this stuff.
It's like, how don't you?
Do you think 90s heads got Soulja Boy?
Right.
Like, it's like, I was there. You and I both knew how to crank that, so it's like, you can't have bought into that craze, but then later down the road be like, I don't know about this Versace thing. That
right.
seems like it's going a little too far.
Like Tone Loc, Baby Got Back.
Sure.
Those are the equivalent to the mumble rap. I wish I was a little bit taller.
I wish I was a baller. Yeah, they're fun little novelty tracks.
Yeah, very much so. And like, it's probably more. I'm probably getting, in fact, this is helping. I'm gonna have a come to Jesus moment and probably list some really awful, disposable novelty rap music from this real hip hop era to kind of show no, we had all of the same. There were two. This is what I always say. There were two Whoop There It Is on the top 10 at one time in the 90s.
God, Whoop There It Is. That song went hard though.
It was amazing. Yeah, because so why are we angry that Gucci Gang and so on and so forth? I don't know what the thing is now, and that's another thing. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's work backwards. This is already here. So one thing that I do think is different, and I don't know how I feel about it, is music culture is much more stratified now. So one of the more interesting things I've seen you talk about that I tracked a little bit is what was this girl pop punk band that were industry plants and there was a lot of drama for a second?
Oh yeah, that's what people were claiming. I mean, I've since talked with one of the members of the band and did an interview with her and kind of caught up and everything and sort of got into the firestorm of the controversy around them. But their name is Tramp Stamps.
Tramp Stamps.
And yeah, I think obviously the industry plant claims were sort of untrue, but still within punk music culturally, just like there is in hip hop, there is kind of this demand for authenticity. Right. You know what I mean? You don't saunter into it being completely ignorant toward the craft and the history and the so on and so forth, at least in terms of how you operate within certain circles of it, because obviously at this point there's a whole section of the hip hop industry that exists just purely for the industry side of it, and it doesn't matter how plugged in you are to the history of it or anything of the artistry. You're just kind of doing your thing to kind of get the bag,
to get the product.
And obviously at this point with pop punk and punk music in general being commodified in the way that it has, there's a whole section of punk music that's pretty much serving the same purpose as well. Right. And acts like Machine Gun Kelly, Avril Lavigne operate in those spaces, who have sort of a punk affectation to their voice and sort of a punk style, but it's they're not playing basement shows or anything like that. They don't have super overtly political lyrics or anything.
It's very what's the word I'm looking for? Pasteurized.
Yeah, exactly. And people who were true punks on TikTok were sort of seeing this band thrown in front of their face. And the way the TikTok algorithm works is that it's all purely just based on engagement. And one of the things that I don't like about the TikTok app though is that it doesn't care what kind of engagement it is. It could be positive engagement, or it could be the worst, nastiest, most disgusting, hateful, sometimes sexist, sometimes racist, homophobic, whatever kind of bigotry you can come up with. As long as it's engagement, the clock app doesn't care if it's the worst engagement in the world, it will influence it. It'll find people who are connected to other people who are engaging with or liking or reacting to or commenting on similar content, be it positively or negatively, and just flood all of those people onto a certain side of the app.
And then it becomes organically viral, even though it's more like a virus, because it's making people upset, but
it's infecting people with like an anger, like an upset attitude, just to kind of like put a label on it. If, for example, you had some ignorant, young mumble rapper, and I know this is like passe at this point, but for example, if they wanted to come onto the mic during an interview and just be like, yeah, Tupac sucks, Tupac is trash, he never made a good song, it's going to algorithmically find all the people who are, I don't know what, liking Ghostface Killer freestyles, they're liking, like Funkmaster Flex, this, that, and the other thing, they're liking certain types of videos that are of a certain taste. If one of those hip hop heads happens to come across those videos and maybe leave a bunch of negative comments, it's going to bring a bunch of other people who like that same shit over to have a similar reaction. And before you know it, you've got thousands of comments of people being like, when I see you, you're dead, you know shit. You don't know this. You don't know that. This is
why hip hop is dead, and then it's then somehow homophobia ends up in the conversation.
Sure.
And it's so it incentivizes that to an extent, and that's kind of like one of the arguments I put, not arguments, because I wasn't saying this is a good thing, but I was saying it was a thing that made the 90s and early 2000s different, is that now the gatekeepers are algorithmic now. They're literal machines, whereas before they were people, and they weren't necessarily good people. In fact, most of them probably bad people.
Yeah, probably.
But that structure, I feel like I don't know what I feel, because the point I'm bringing up is like, before I felt like there was a map of music culture, and I knew how to get to each section, or I would be able to sit in one spot and watch MTV or VH1 or BET and travel through all the sections to see what's going on and know like what's next, what's hot, what's interesting, whatever. Whereas now you get to be completely inundated in your own bubble of the thing you love the most that's algorithmically optimized for you.
Yeah.
And you may not ever know that a thing happened over here. And if you want to know that thing, you have to basically rearrange you have to search for it, which then may or may not rearrange your whole algorithm. And you may not be able to search for it because your algorithm is like, are you sure? You sure you don't mean this? And so what that does is it in a weird way, from my perspective, it makes the culture of music less interesting, because now like you're one of the few figures that will travel through hip hop, indie, rock, metal, other stuff I've never heard before in a general time frame versus, I can watch Sean C. Or, there's a hip hop channel that they post a lot of videos. I don't remember their names. And so like, they're only going to do hip hop because YouTube will punish them if they do something else that their fans don't like.
Oh, no, it's true. And, the thing is like, I mean, every week I take hits all the time, with how I like plan out a lot of my content, I will go into a week knowing a certain video or review will do well, because that'll sort of be the mainstream coverage of the week. And then the rest of the week I'll spend sort of maybe talking about more mid-grade or more obscure, records here and there that are grabbing my attention personally. Thankfully, over the years, I've kind of built an audience where there is a lot of overlap in terms of like what I personally want to cover and what my audience is interested in.
Yeah.
But, consistently every week I'll drop at least one or two videos that, will just like get 30K, 50K, just like a fraction of what I might get if it's a Kendrick review.
Right.
But, the thing is like, but there's not a Kendrick record every week, number one. Yeah. I got to fill up my time somehow. And number two, like if I was only just sitting around and waiting for whatever the mainstream was thrown into my lap, I'd go crazy. I'd go fucking insane. Like, because the thing is, that's not fun to me.
Right.
You know, some of the most fun records to listen to are the ones that nobody knows about. And thankfully I've come up with a system where I can kind of like, you know, with the yellow flannel or something like that, like communicate to the audience, like, hey, I think this is a good one. You should check it out.
Check it out.
This cultural conversation, it's exciting, but then also odd, because I feel like my job puts me in a place, in a position, and also just my own personal preferences, to where I'm listening to a lot of younger artists and enjoying what they do, and I'm very excited about what they do. And you know, I feel like just as it was the case when I was growing up, the most exciting stuff consistently is being made by young people, you know, and I feel like it's on me to kind of scope that out. And you know, while there are a lot of older artists out there that are still doing good stuff and still doing worthwhile stuff and still doing stuff that's worth checking out, I feel like as somebody whose job it is to kind of keep tabs on what is the cutting edge, you know, I have to kind of stay in tune with that, even if when, you know, I go to a family function or a party or to a friend's place, you know, and I'm talking with people about what they're doing and how their life is and what I'm doing, you know, consistently the reaction is like, yeah, I see you on YouTube all the time, but you know, and maybe they've been watching me for a decade at this point. Maybe we've known each other since college or something. I don't know who any of these bands are anymore that you're talking about. I don't know who the fuck any of these people are.
Right. Who are these people?
And like,